My first clue that something was wrong in the homeless department of Marin County, California, was my visits to Thailand. I would head off to a country where the average salary is now roughly $300 a month and would not see any homeless people. And I would return back to the fifth wealthiest county in the United States with an average income of $150,000 a year. And the same homeless faces would show up month after month on my street, and nothing that I could tell was changing that pattern. Now, I make $175 an hour doing landscape design work, and I turn away a fair amount of work. In other words, people want to hire me. They want to pay money for my time to help them spend more money, to invest more natural resources in the transformation of their gardens. Now, one of the hardest sells that I've ever had to make was to the church. The first church I reached out to, Unity at Marin. And it took more than 6 months of emails back and forth to give a free presentation about a year's worth of research that I gathered about the homeless situation in Marin County. Letters to my mayor, which were always welcome as a business person, were not welcome as a citizen trying to do something about homelessness. The most interesting thing that I found was that most of the laws that exist that relate to homelessness involved spending more money to increase homelessness than we spent to eliminate it. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I own a lot in my city. And if I try and build a small, ecologically friendly house, it puts me below the legal threshold of 1,200 square feet. So, by law, I am required to build at least 1,200 square feet. And you might say, why is that? Why is it that in a free country, quote unquote, with dwindling ecological resources, with neighbors that do not enjoy construction? Ask any neighborhood, would you enjoy a 1-year process of hammering and nailing and jackhammering? And they would all say, no, no, no. They would much rather have a 6-month or a 3-month process. Would the neighbors like a more big house or a smaller house to see outside their windows? Of course, they'd all like to see as little house as possible. So why does the law require me to build a 1,200 square foot house that takes a year to build in my county when everyone wants and the planet needs a smaller house? It's a good question. It's a question that is not demanded in Thailand. If you want to build a little 100 square foot house in Thailand, so be it. In fact, the 3 years I was advised it would take me to obtain all of the necessary permits to build on my land do not even exist in Thailand. And so you can see that in the land of the brave and the home of the free, I don't even have the freedom to build an ecologically sound, cost-effective, tiny house on my own land, despite everyone apparently benefiting from such a scenario. And of course, this ties into the reason that the average home price in my county is $1.2 million, and the average home price in Thailand is, let's say, $1,000. I don't have the statistical data. I just know that while I was on vacation next to my apartment, or while I was back in the U.S., 3 little houses went up next door, no permits, no fuss, no multi-story monstrosities. 3 little homes went up for, I don't know, I would guess $1,000 each, maybe less, maybe $500. And I had new neighbors. A fun family with chickens, hammocks, no homeless people. Now, there are over 1,000 other regulations in the United States, each of which increase the cost of housing. If I don't want to have electricity for a given room, tough luck. I am mandated by law to bring electricity into every single room. If I do not want to double the engineering required for building my house, tough luck. A law was passed that required all engineers to double their calculations. So you would build to the 100-year earthquake. Reasonable. So you are required by law to build to a 100-year earthquake. Reasonable. But then they are required by law to double that. I asked the engineer how much that would add to the cost of my foundation. He said more than $75,000. So now you start to see why we have homelessness in Marin County, but not in Thailand. They're not even required by law to build to the 100-year earthquake. And when you have millions of Americans suffering real depression, when you have more suicides than you have car fatalities, when you have a scarce ecology, do we really need to mandate by law that people build their own homes better than they can afford to build them? Obviously, enlightened self-interest is at work in any situation. If you are a millionaire, you are going to build a better house, most likely, than if you are homeless trying to get off the streets. But as we create a burgeoning population of homeless people, many of them veterans, but also 1 in 50 children under the legal age are going to be so traumatized in the United States that they're going to run away from home before the age of 18. They've got free food, free rent, but the levels of abuse in the United States are such that 1 in 50 actually leaves home and goes out, and of course they can't get a legal job. They're choosing to tough it illegally and give up free rent and food to escape the cruelty, the stupidity, the shame games of emotionally illiterate, highly abusive parents. We create homelessness by a series of laws that increased housing costs, slow down the building process, require people to do the opposite of what's good for the environment and what's good for the neighborhood, and there's a schizophrenia that does not welcome resolution at local government offices. Now, there are pockets of interest around the United States, and there are the odd mayors that I've looked up trying to see if any city in America has been able to do what they've done in Thailand. Stop creating homelessness in the first place, or if you're going to pass 1,000 separate laws that increase the cost of housing, slow it down and make it clear that the biggest investment in your life is going to be an arduous, tedious burden as opposed to a joyful expenditure. That we at least welcome and engage with people wanting to fix the problem. I've never felt so unwelcome as when I volunteered my time to solve the design process, the design crisis that is the manufacturing of unnecessary homelessness in the United States. It is absolutely bizarre to me that competent time cannot be funneled and data-based attention is not welcome. And one of the interesting side effects that I'll finish with is I've learned that through the combination of policing, park redesign, for example, in my city, they just redesigned a park, and as a landscape designer, I looked at it and I thought, why did you just tear up $100,000 of nice work? It was interesting. Well, of course, you can't get an honest answer in a politically correct culture that is schizophrenic. So I talked with the neighbor of one of my landscape jobs who worked in the local parks department for 30 years or so. And he said, we tore up that park because the homeless were sleeping on the benches that were in that park. So the art installation and the nice set of benches that I had admired as a landscape designer and which the public had paid for were torn up, and $100,000 of money was spent to make the park less friendly to the homeless, i.e., no more benches for the public, no more art installation. So the public paid for money to put in comfortable benches and an art installation. And then the public paid to tear it all out. And then the public paid, as well as the environment, to put in a new $100,000 installation, specifically to make it less friendly for American citizens to rest in who are homeless. And none of that money went to the homeless, to giving them housing. If 4 or 5 homeless people were taking naps in the benches, and in a Christian culture, this was too uncomfortable for frequenters of the park, how about spending some of that money? We're up well over $200,000 on rent subsidies for those 4 or 5 people. Hey, how much do you need to get into a room? We don't think that way. And the $140 a month that I spend on my apartment in Thailand, which is a more enjoyable experience for me than the $4,000 a month I spend for my house in Marin. Why is it so expensive to live? It's the same process. In other words, I'm spending more than 10 times the money to have a less enjoyable experience because housing costs are jacked up. And then we say we don't have enough money for this. But the bottom line is that all of these costs, including emergency room visits, make sure that the public spends without acknowledging it, because it's politically incorrect. We don't like as a public to help our homeless. The public spends an average of $40,000 to $60,000 per chronic homeless person to manage the issue. So we create homelessness with over 1,000 laws that jack up the cost of housing and make it out of the range of any of the people on the street. We make it illegal to solve the problem. I've tried in a number of different ways. Then we make it illegal for the homeless to sleep in their cars without providing an alternative. And then we spend $40,000 to $60,000 a year to manage, per person, to manage the homelessness that we've institutionalized, that a country like Thailand is too intelligent to begin in the first place. Now, when you can understand in detail the thought or lack of it, the systemic cruelty, the carrot and stick dynamic that punishes an American for trying to donate time to help human beings in their city and rewards them for making lots of money consuming large amounts of natural resources. When you understand the system that makes this experience probable in the United States, where we have $300 a month average salary in Thailand and $11,000 a month average salary in my county. It's not a money issue. The Thai do not have 48 hours a day to take care of their people. And there are I should add, there is no housing program in Thailand. HUD, the Housing Development Program in the United States, with billions of dollars a year in budget, it doesn't exist in Thailand. Not a single government office assists Thai people in being housed. It's just that no government offices exist that prevent the Thai people from housing themselves. We have national parks. We have public land. Our homeless sometimes put up little tents and encampments there. We spend money to tear those down. We don't spend any money. Well, we not only spend money to tear those down, we do spend money to make it illegal to build low-cost housing in any number of places. And in addition, because local governments get most of their revenues from property taxes, the local government is incentivized, is very happy to see another $2, $3, $4 million home going in the neighborhood. It may be bad for the environment. It may be bad for the neighbors. It may cost a fortune for the new resident. But who cares? When the local city getting a percentage of the building permit, when the local contractors making a lot of money on such a high profit house, when the banks, who will of course get a very nice mortgage from a $5 million home, when the real estate agents, who will get a higher commission to sell a $5,000 home than a $10,000 or a $5 million home than a $50,000 home. You see, there are a number of beneficiaries. And when we understand who makes the money and why, we understand that the city is able to pay its employees more money and have more power with these tax dollars, then maybe it explains why I get a lot of attention as a business owner paying city taxes and actively stonewalled as a local citizen trying to solve the problem that local government creates in the first place.